too, my Camtasia, it's got a terrible memory leak in it. And I was saving and doing things in it, and man, it slowed everything to a crawl. So up in the file, come down to Quick Clone and click that. And all of a sudden it will bring up something that looks kind of like this. And if you can't see it already, come in Window, come down to Photo Art Panels, and just click on the top one, and it will open everything there. And I'll play with those in a minute, but what I wanted to do is there's 4 kinds of cloning brushes: general, messy, tinting, and touch-up. When I was evaluating these brushes, and I don't have a clue, and I told him so, why anybody would want to use a messy cloner, because when you're cloning, you kind of want it to look something like the original. Anyway, in Cloners General, so the top one in Cloners in the brush menu, and I should probably just open that window, brush selector, full view. I'm picking this Impressionist one just because I really like this thing for demoing in it. Couple things I want you to do to make a little bit of change to it. So you can see the ghost of the Impressionist brush here, correct? Thanks. So what I want you to do is click on the Advanced Brush Controls. It'll bring up this panel. And I want you to, I can't drag it off here, but the Angle tab. So about midway, I'll close all these others. The Angle tab, I want you to change this angle from 0 to 90. And all I'm doing is making this brush so it'll align with your direction a little more interesting. So it's not a big deal. You will notice too when you're using clone brushes, this goes gray. The color picker goes gray. And it does that because it is going to be picking the color from the original image. This is what I was telling you the guy was doing online, where he had all his swatches out and they were all set here, and he's painting on one picture and it looked brilliant, but he was just dipping. He wasn't dipping in any color at all. He was using color from the original photo. So I'm not going to hide it. Once you've got that angle set to 90, you can leave the range 360, the angle step. This means that the angle of the brush will jump in 5 degrees, 5 degrees when you move it. I want you to set the expression, which is what drives this brush, how the dabs are laid down, to direction. I think it's set to bearing first of all. So it should be angle 90, squeeze is 99, which is fine. Angle jitter 0, smoothness 0, and expressions direction, just leave that 0. The angle range is 360 degrees, and the angle step is 5, or you could make it a little less. I think I'll probably make it 3. And it'll take a second just to update that, not very long. And so now I'm going to be ready to paint with this brush. In the photo art panels here, let me move. I can close this brush advanced. In the photo art panel, it says clone source in this top tab, and you come down and toggle tracing paper is checked. If you turn that off, you will see nothing but a white clone source. I mean a white background. That's okay. Show the source image and it will show you, okay, you do have a source image up here. You can actually,
Where is that at?
where's what?
The photo art.
Window, and it's down here. So it's about 3/4 of the way down. And just click on any one of them and it should open them all. Find it?
It's on, but I can't find it. Hold on.
Look under a menu or something. If it's turned on, it is there somewhere.
Yeah.
If you can't see it, try coming back to Window, Layout, and go all the way down to Photo Art, and that might bring it on the screen if it's hiding off the screen.
Okay. Hold on. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
no problem. So I'm going to just minimize. I got to get back to my
So what do we click on that?
any one of them, and it should open this Photo Art panel.
Oh yeah, but like what option do we have to change?
Well, let me get back to this. So here's the image I've got. And if you want to see the source image, this top box, it says show source image. Otherwise,
Okay.
it just hides it. You don't need to see it. Okay,
Okay.
it doesn't need to be there. But when you create it, it's going to come up with tracing paper toggled on like this. So what you see is an image. The original image is like it's tracing paper. You can move the opacity down to 0 of what you're going to be painting on, or you can move it all the way up and just see a little ghost of your image. If you're worried about where you're painting, you probably want to see it on or off. Now, if you're going to do this a lot, you can put these commands on, a panel that would be off, so it would save you some time. I'm going to go ahead and turn it off because I want you to see what this does. So my Impressionist cloning brush is 232.7. So anything around 230 to 240 will work fine. I don't have to pick anything else around, and I'm just going to start making random strokes. So now you see my strokes following me. This will become increasingly apparent why this is a good thing. Otherwise, you'd just be laying them down kind of all over the place. Now, it doesn't matter initially. Just paint a bunch of random stuff in it. And look at how fast you're picking color from your swatches. And you're going to paint this famous bulldog and post it up, and nobody's going to know that you weren't doing it. Well, you are doing it, actually. Now, if you're feeling kind of particularly lazy, come up under brushes, and you can either load a stroke or you can record a stroke. So I'll record a stroke. And then I will come back, and because I'm particularly lazy today, I'm going to auto play back that stroke. And you can watch how fast it'll cover the entire canvas. And I can let it play as long as I want. It might send me into seizures, but that's okay. So all this will do is just cover it really, really quick. And tap in it, and it stops it. So at this point, I got this kind of dog thing looking like a real mess. So now I'm going to just manually, good, it stopped. I'm going to just go back around it here and there and just clean up all of the randomness. So I just don't want it spilling everywhere. Now you don't have to do it if you don't want to, but I don't like things looking like they have been automatically painted randomly across it. Now, you should all be still up with me at this point, yes? Easy? And it's okay if you're just, it's okay if you're just watching. Did you say something, Chris?
Yeah, I had lost you when you had somehow changed it to white and then gone back over and started painting.
It's right here on the photo art panel, this toggle tracing paper. See, that will put on, and if I've got this stroke on it, so, but it will put a ghost image of the dog or whatever you've got on top of the white. And you can either, you know, go to 100% and it goes away, or down to the bottom, and there you see the opaque version of what you're cloning. Now this becomes important because you can load in different images to clone from into one, but for what we're doing right now, it doesn't matter. And I just turn it off what I'm starting because I don't need it at all. You see what I'm doing now? Okay, so I'll turn it on a little bit, but I'm going to have it hardly, you know, just showing a shadow of the dog right now. Because now what I'm going to do is, even though I'm using the same brush that's all over the place, I'm going to make it about half the size. So I'm going to make it 120. I guess I should type it in. And the size is not that critical, other than you can see now I have about half the brush size that you can see with my brush ghosting. And with this, I'm still picking up the clone color, but it's going to make it so, let me turn it off, so I can come in and start to refine some of this. So a lot of this deep brown spilled over into the dog, but now I can start narrowing the range of color in here. And I'm just, at this point, I'm still going pretty random. I'm not worried about looking at the dog, but what I'm going to be doing is getting smaller and smaller and smaller brushes and painting it until the dog, you can see what it is really quite well. This is really, I think it's important for you to know, because I think you can make money doing this. You know, people, literally dead pets or dead family members or what, you know, you can make money doing this kind of stuff. Making a photo look like a painting. I tried to teach some photographer friends years ago how to do this. And the problem they had is they didn't have background as a painter to know how to put the strokes down. And so they had a really hard time aligning things so it didn't look like you just run a filter over it. But if you know, if you're good enough to paint a picture and you know how to put the strokes down, this can be a pretty cool thing. I would imagine wedding photos would be a great market because, you know, Daddy will pay for really fancy bride pictures. So if you work in conjunction with a photographer, I think you both could make good money. Okay, so you can start to see now with this brush that's still quite big, you can start to see what the animal, you know, you can start to see in it. Now I'll leave the strokes pretty random in the background. I don't want to obliterate them all. This also would work with photographs or anything. I mean, landscapes. But in the front now, I'm starting to just make my strokes one direction because I'm not going to want to look like he's floating in the air or anything strange. Okay, now I'm going to come in and go even down a little bit smaller. So I'll go 70. Okay, so now you can see how really small my stroke is getting. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. And I'm just, again, narrowing in to what I'm painting. If I turn on the tracing paper a little bit, I can start to work in certain areas. So I can start to work the pinks, the browns up to it. And I can start to bring a little bit of cohesiveness. Now, I chose to make the direction of this brush important because of this funny, this funny collar that this dog is wearing. And by making my strokes kind of align like they do, it works well with the subject. I'm going to show you after this how to make a pencil drawing of this too. And that's when aligning the strokes really does become important. But this is why you need to know what, at least a basic process for creating a painting, because you don't want it to look like you just ran some global thing over it that added a bunch of strokes for no reason. And you can go as fast as you want. I'm going, pretty fast when I'm making the strokes, but I don't want to lose you guys, so when I need to, I'll slow down. Okay, if I want to see what I'm doing, again, I'll toggle on the tracing paper and I'll lower it a little bit more. So you can see now my strokes starting to build up. Get the eyeglasses here. And I will use the toggle the tracing paper when I get smaller and smaller and smaller, so I can find where the edges of things are. Dog paws. Now you can mix brushes as much as you want, but I don't usually do it until the very end for a really specific reason, because I'm quite happy with the brushes looking very much, the strokes are visible. So I'll turn it off. So you see he's coming a bit more now. So I'm going to go down to 35, maybe 40. And you'll probably notice already that I'm not taking these small brushes into the background at all. These are brushes that I'm using in the foreground. The only background I would use them is like around the hat here, bringing in some of the browns in the background up to the edge of the hat, so it starts to look like a hat. Let me see what you can see that there's a lot of, I'm not going to get a lot of this, a lot of these tiny details in here. It's just, I'll get a few, but it's just a little bit hard to do this and get detail in it unless you just start doing a straight cloning, and then you break the effect pretty quick. So I'm just going to toggle it off for a minute. So go down, and with each step, with each brush getting a little bit smaller, the detail comes up a bit more. And this just happens to be one of my favorite brushes if I'm doing this. But there are so many of them, except for the messy ones. I don't know why anybody'd use those, but they're there. I try to have, again, some method to my madness. I don't feel it does any good just to just go completely random on all this stuff. Okay, at a certain point, you start to go, okay, well, this brush is all over the place, and it is. So one thing you can do is you come with the tracing paper on, you can come in here and on your color over here, the little rubber stamp, the clone color, click that off. So now what I'm doing is I'm picking from the image the color. So like if I want to go along his back here and up here, I can start doing it. Let me turn that off. Now this brush blends quite a bit. So if I want it to not blend as much, I'm going to lower the bleed to 45 or 50% and increase the resaturation to 56, 57%. Now when I come along here, it's painting for the most part with a little bit of bleed, but it's painting the colors that I'm picking from the image. So if I want to reinforce the yellow, the pink, now I can start doing, bringing in the colors I want. And I still am worried about using the clone colors, but I also want to be able to control the edges a lot. You can also do the same thing, picking any other brush in Painter you want and clicking that, and it will turn on the clone color. So, see, I just painted over the blue there, so I don't want to do that. So I'll clean that up. This is where generally I'll have to go back and just double check, because there's, let's see if I can pick this blue. Nope, see, it's not picking from the clone color, so I'm going to get that color painted again. And now I'll pick it. And I will toggle back and forth between picking my colors and working with the clone color as I get more and more serious about it. So looking at the dog, I want these yellow, bright yellow glasses. I'm going to lower that a lot, but I'm going to go ahead and go with a bright yellow. I was spilling into the lenses, but I can go in and clean that up. I'm still using a pretty big brush, 40 pixels. Okay, so turn it off. Now you can see I'm getting the glasses here. The pink on the side. Okay, I'm not going to go a whole lot longer before I start really zooming into this to show you all the good cheat things that work. I shouldn't say cheat, the artistically liberating things that work. Look at that tracing paper. It is important to make sure you got your basic shapes set in pretty good. So the white on the edge of the dog, pink tongue, and how much you want to come in the dog himself on his feet and things. That's kind of up to you. toggle it off. So he's getting more and more, whoops. Come on. Starting to look more and more. I'd work this back and forth until it really looked pretty good. I'd use a smaller brush, so I'll go into 20. And come back in and work with around the glasses. So I can start to get more and more detail. Just using a smaller brush. His tongue. You know, I can see aside from just painting a photo this way, I could see really good value in using this for preliminary, paintings and even working up some thumbnails, that kind of thing. But there's really quite a big segment of people that like photo painting. If you go online, you'll find YouTube ones that they're doing this kind of thing with Painter online there. So just as the smaller brush gets smaller, I get into more and more detail. I'm gonna move ahead now really pretty quick. The hat, of course. And don't hesitate again to turn off the clone color if you need to pick a color to work with. I'm going to show more of that to do a pencil drawing of this. Okay, so periodically you should save it. This is an untitled image right now. If you just, I think, maybe it's not untitled. Yeah, it is. Sometimes I've seen it save with clone of and then the title of the original file you're cloning from. But this is all just on the canvas, so you're still working. Okay. So get to a certain point, and this isn't yet to that, but I think you all can see what I'm doing and the potential of this. And when I want to finish this thing up, I come in and we'll use a different cloner. So for example, I may come in, and I haven't tried this one particularly, dry pastel or chalk. And I select a dry pastel. And this one gives me a bit, not as smeary, still smears, but not nearly as random a stroke. So you can start to clean things up. And it's still smearing, and I would say, yeah, go ahead when you're doing this and, make some, paint the thing like you are actually painting it. This opacity is pretty high. You could turn it down if you wanted. Most of the time, just generally, I like using pretty low opacity brushes. So 30 on down, probably. And if I start beating up all the strokes too bad, the these impressionistic ones, which is why I picked that first brush. I can go back in and pick it again and use it. Now I am using my this brush, and I'm kind of following the way the strokes laid down with the earlier brush. And just because you don't have to pick the colors, it should go pretty fast. If I know where his tongue is, I'll probably be a little more careful on the edges around it. So it's getting more and more like them. Now, this light side of the eyeglasses, I'm not sure I like that too much, so I'm going to turn off the clone color and select the dark eyeglasses color. And then I'll probably make my own highlights. Now, if I get this all the way and I'm perfectly happy with it, turn on the tracing paper. Opacity's fine. I'm going to turn the resaturation down a little bit because I want to bring out the nose and a couple of these funny little areas on it. So let me hide this for a second. Get this dark color, toggle it in. And I'm making this small, so it's about 9 pixels. And I'm bringing in now the dog nose, his tongue. So I'm drawing a little bit at this point. If I toggle it off, you can see the start of the nose here, line between the mouth. And when I want to, toggle it back on. And I'll just get more and more careful bringing in the strokes. Then, when I'm getting tired and I want to be done, I'd probably put highlights on his nose. Let's see, maybe with a bluer color. I find it helps sell the idea a lot better if I will come in and just use picked colors from the image, of course, but if I will make sure that I'm painting some of this and not just following the dog blindly. Okay, and I've got a big gooey lip down here. Zoom out. So he's getting closer and closer. This still needs a lot of work up here. But what I'll do for finishing, for the very finish on this, let me add a few more strokes up here just to kind of even this out. Okay, so no tracing paper. Now he's starting to look more and more like a real ugly painted bulldog with a very small hat. But to finish areas like the nose, the tongue, any areas that I feel are important, I'll come in and in the touch-up ones, I will pick soft cloner. And I'll come in and make it big. On this one, it tapers really to a small size. I don't want that because I just want it to be soft. So change that and size. I'm just going to turn off pressure to none. So now it's only going to paint the size of whatever this is. Opacity 24. I might want it smaller. But then what I'll do is come in with this. And I start adding actually stuff from the image. So I don't have any tracing paper turned on, particularly in the face. If I'm doing a human, the eyes, the nose, the mouth. So on this guy, I think I'd probably come in and stick to the face area, but I can add a few, clean up the edge on some of this. On the top here, really lightly, I can add some of these details in his jowls, on his tongue. The trick is not to do too much because you don't want it to break the idea of a piece of art. And I would say most of the time I go back in and paint over it a little bit anyway. But it really helps bring back in any of the little details here and there on the collar. And if you do it smart enough, nobody's going to notice. Now, no tracing paper, so I'm going to have to clean up like this edge right here, right there. But I do want a little bit of kind of the folds in the collar showing. Maybe the points of the hat. If in a human, this would be mostly concentrated on the face. Now, I've got to decide. This is where you start to make decisions as an artist. Do I want this back leg that if I toggle the tracing paper on, is that back leg important to me? Maybe not. Whoops. So space, I didn't know space toggled it on and off. So now I know. Okay, it's off. That's inconvenient. Get them out of the way. I've messed up my keys somehow. There we go. Okay, so the paper's off now. I would come in with the brush before or just a regular brush. So I'm picking a regular brush, and I think I want to use a square Conte crayon. And I do want to go ahead and use the color. So I'll just pick it and start painting. So I don't want this to be showing up too much, this pink spill over. The yellow. And you can start adding layers and clean things up on layers, do whatever you want to do. It's faster than really trying to paint it, but at a certain point, you've got to paint some anyway. Everybody's looking like a great painting of a famous celebrity or something. So,
image and added it to the new polish tool.
okay. And I don't care if you're just watching. I am recording this, so. Okay, so there's basic, really quick clone. If I want to work in this background, I just click that and it goes off. So now I don't have to pick colors. I can just use this same brush. I've got a terrible paper texture showing up. Couple of things I would do to finish this. Let me change my paper texture. That's awful. Okay, just a standard paper. Again, you don't have to pick your colors because they just come out. But like in a traditional painting, you want to spend 80% of your time up in here and the rest of the time playing around in the background. Because if you do it well, nobody's really going to care what's in the background. And then the last bit, a couple things you could do. This is on the canvas layer, so you could do effects, apply surface texture, and brings up the dialog. And right now it's looking at the paper texture, and at 50% you can't see it. So let me go back out, get it 100%. Effects, apply surface texture, and this will make it, of course, appear. If I turn the preview on and off, I don't know if you can see it, but it makes it look like it's done on some paper. But I might, in this case, also choose either the original, which I think is the clone source. Yes. Okay, so now the original is looking at the clone source. I've got to invert it because it's kind of reversed the light from what I want. Let me check that again. Yeah, I want it to look a little bit like the light coming up from above. And I probably don't want a whole lot. What I'd really probably actually do would be do this on a layer. I'd duplicate this and then on a layer do it. But I'm just going to let it go. So, okay. And this will, now in the glass, as you can see, it's kind of messed things up a little bit. So I'd come in and clean up those edges a little bit. It's always just a little bit back and forth on this. I might actually draw a shadow under the glasses, clean up the top edge, turn on the clone color for that. If this is too dominant for me, which I don't like it that much, I would come in and probably with a blender just add grain or just add water, one of those, with a real low opacity. So I'm going down to about 11% size. Okay, come on, brush. Bigger size. I can't see a lot of change actually. But I'd soften some, there I got a better one. I'd soften some of If it looks too photo, soften it a little bit. And then when I got, look, I need to add, I cut off half of his hat. So I come in and cloner touch up. And to really do this well, you do need to play around a bit with what you, with all of these and see what happens and what works and what doesn't work. I might even come back to the Impressionist one if it'll load for me. There we go. Make it a little bigger. And just clean up the edge of it. And then the last final thing would be, well, I would, of course, add a bright highlight. Maybe not with that brush. No, definitely not with that brush. And there's a pencil cloner. I haven't tried that one before. Turn it off. And then I might add another paper texture to the whole thing. You can see there's a little bit of mess here where it cloned outside of, you know, the ruffle doesn't come all the way out. So I'd go back in and touch all that stuff up. Okay. So there is basic photo cloning, really quick and dirty, and it still took about an hour, number one. I couldn't paint this darn dog in an hour, so come in and clean up a little more. So now if I want to, I'll save him. Save as and color dog clone. If you anticipate coming back in and wanting to rework on it or work a little more on it, you have to save it as the RIF file. If you do, it will, and you open it back up, it will open up the image that you clone from also. If you don't, you'll lose that information. So color dog clone, save, and then I can close him. So that's not the one I wanted. That's my flaming guy. Let me get the recent dog back. Okay, so if I want to do a pencil sketch, got the dog back, first thing I'm going to do is get rid of the color. Saturation's all the way down. I'm going to increase the contrast some, so I'll click OK. Under Effects, Tonal Control, Equalize. So here's my map of where everything is. There's hardly any whites in the image because you can see the sliders up here. So I'm going to move this down and increase the number of whites. And I don't want to blow out everything, but the reason I want whites is because I'm going to go ahead and do this on a piece of gray. My clone I'm going to fill with a gray first. So I've got this same guy, File, Quick Clone. Saving the changes to him. So here's my gray guy. Now, let me get, I'm going to fill this with a gray color, mid-tone gray. Not a gradient, just the regular gray. Everything darkens a little bit, and that's okay. I'm not going to use, I probably could use pencil, but I'm not going to use pencil clone brush. I like the pencils themselves quite a bit more. So come down and pencils. And it becomes even more critical when you're doing this that you make sure you can place your strokes fine. So I'll show you what happens if you just start painting with them. So the soft 4B pencil, and I've got to change it again to the clone color. And so you can see it is bringing in my black and white dog. But it's really mushy, and I don't want that. So I'm going to clear it off. I've got to fill it again. Brush. I'm probably going to go down smaller. And I'm going to turn initially the paper tape, the tracing paper on, and zoom in. And I got to do this part, rotating it and doing all sorts of things, because now I'm going to come in with this small brush and I'm going to draw a rough outline of this whole guy. So his glasses, his hat, the ribbon, and I'll turn it off in just a sec so you can see where it's going. The ruffle, I'm just going to kind of scribble it in. The nose of the dog. And this is ideally too, I would have the original image of this. Here's his poor eye. Open so I could use it as reference. I wonder if it'll open in the navigator panel. So let me see here. Window. Reference image. Nope. It's just showing what I'm working on. So what I'm trying to do is, at this point, just kind of get in the big areas of value and where things are. So the side of the dog's face. His jowls down here. More ribbon. More ribbon. Whoops, I hid you guys. Hang on a second. I hit the window key. There you are. Okay. His doggy paws. It takes, I think, a little bit longer, other than color, the color in it, to do this, but not too bad. So once I've got him basically drawn in, move him over, and then I usually start in the background, and in this case it would work well, because for the most part the background is just plain dark values. So what I'll do, and I know pretty much where the dog is, so I might start somewhere, and the trouble is you can't use too big a brush. This is 25 pixels. The opacity is 15%. I probably want the opacity up at least 50, but that might be good. And then I'll just start drawing. Let me turn that off. This is why I find out where the edge of things are, because I will start drawing like I was cross-hatching it. So his nose, I know is going to be black. And I'll do an awful lot of this initially with the clone colors, but then I will switch and start using just picked values, so I can get, I don't want my strokes to look multi-toned. So he's white along here. And if you can draw pretty well, then you're going to know how to lay down the strokes so they reinforce the look and the values. So see the dog's eyes here, and you can see it now. But this is definitely an area where I will come in and redraw all the strokes to bring out the dog's eye. Dog's head. Usually I'd be a lot more careful, but I'm just trying to get it in quick so you can see what I'm doing. So in one of these, let's go with this eye. And you have to find a pencil that you like and how big. This works really a lot better. This is a relatively small image, but when you have to draw all these strokes, if you can use the smallest image possible, it doesn't take nearly as much time. Dog tongue. Get this dark. So here's the dog's eye coming out. So in the example images I posted in that one page, this is what I did to make that portrait of that girl. And this actually uses a lot more of your artistic sense than doing the color ones, because you do have to lay the strokes down. Now you could use some stipple kind of brushes too if you wanted. Okay, so now if I was going to be doing this and I really wanted this to look more on these dog's eyes, what I would do after probably another hour's work, but I don't want to do it that much here, so I'll just get it knocked in, is I would zoom in and I'd look and see what it is about the dog's eye that is important. So there's this fold that comes up, and it's kind of a continuation of this. And then his eyelid, which comes around here. I didn't realize this was his lower lid coming out from behind. So I'm still cloning this stuff now so I can see what it's doing. And now I would switch and start to do things where I'm picking up the actual values that I'm using, the actual values that I want to use. So I can accentuate a little bit. I can make some strokes that look a little more arty. I can work with this crease that comes down his nose. Get his under eyelid better. Because I'm at this, doing it this way, I'm the one that's deciding what the values are going to be once I've got in the basic stuff. And this is where it will start looking much more like a drawing than something else. Because I can always come back in if I get this spilling too much into the eyeglasses. I can always come back in and clean it up just by turning the clone color off, on again. I don't go in and try to do all the details this soon. I'll try to work the whole thing out first, and then I'll come in and start to solidify some of these things. So I'm the boss on the values I'm using and the directions the strokes go, that kind of thing. Start making sure my strokes work with the forms. Whenever I get to the side, I'll of course switch back and bring in the clone colors initially. And maybe I want a little bit of his upper eyelid to show, so. Let me turn on the tracing paper. So I'm not going to want all these kind of little dark speckles and things in, but now I can understand how it's working a little bit under here, so I can keep dark with the eyebrow up here, and I'll actually come in and draw using non-clone colors so I can see where I want things to be. And I don't I don't use a brush that fills this in quickly, because I want it to look like, I've taken the time to draw it. And then the other eye, let me see what it looks like. Oh, wow. What did I do with the other? Oh, I just mistake where it was. Poor dog. He's so ugly. But I will sample the values from in the image that I've already got down also. Let me see what's going on there. I'm not sure why I'm not covering that up. I'd have to go back in and look. That must be a paper texture. Let me check. I don't know why it keeps going back to that nasty paper texture. That's what's getting all these funny little dots in here. Okay, so that's basically the process. If you're going to try doing a pencil one, make sure that you do a small one to begin with. 800 by 600, or, I wouldn't do anything over maybe 1200 by 800. just because it is a lot of work. And then I'll go back and forth. So now I'm using the clone color again. And if you do it quick, you know, the image will appear enough that you can start picking just from in the image and not having to go back to the clone. So you can see already the ruffles in the collar on him. Then I'd go back in, maybe on the one, and turn it off. Turn it off. And let, you know, come in and draw with the actual values to clean things up. If I go with too big a brush, though, it will start to lose. That's not too bad. Maybe you want it less opaque for that. Too big a one, and you will mush up the way the strokes look. And I better come back in with a clone. But you do this and people will feel you are brilliant in your skill to do portraits. All got the idea? How boring? Any questions? Okay, let me stop this recording.
When are we turning off the clone and when to turn it on?
What?
So when do we turn off the clone